You're listening to the Navigating Magic podcast. This is the portal where we illuminate ways to weave ancient wisdom with modern knowledge in order to help ground your experience in this lifetime. I'm your host, Natasha Andreo, and I'm so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone, to the next episode of the Navigating Magic podcast. I have the amazing Kira Sutherland here, who is a medical astrologer, naturopath, and nutritionist. Welcome, Kira.
Oh, thanks for having me, Natasha.
I've been looking forward to this session for so long because I am in such awe and in admiration of you for the teachings and your ethic and the values. And I've been following your work for a while. I'm studying your course at the moment and absolutely in love. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. Just to warn you all, I'm at the end of a head cold or the flu, so I'm a little sniffly sounding. I apologize.
That's fine. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
I would love to, go straight to the beginning, because I know that you're in your studies way back when you started out as a naturopath and there was a missing link.
Yeah. So I was actually studying naturopathy and astrology at the same time back 1,000 decades, 30 years ago, I think. When we were doing naturopathy, you had to do a bunch of not extracurricular, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh. You just had to do a lot of extra courses, and it kind of didn't matter what you did. And so I decided to do some astrology courses, and then realized astrology and medicine have these beautiful links that medicine got rid of about 300 years ago. But if you go back in history before then, they were always connected. And so I did a big deep dive on that, because I just didn't feel like there was a system to put everything through, like the traditional Chinese medicine or the Ayurvedics have. So yeah, it was a really fun exploration of kind of the energetics in the West of how we look at the human body.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, because your work is very unique, like not many naturopaths are out there, studying astrology or have studied medical astrology, because it's a very particular, very specific. So I'd love to know, how has it enhanced your work?
Interesting. So it's an interesting thing, because the world, even naturopathy, is kind of come out from behind the super alternative, and naturopathy is now very evidence-based, and there's a lot of research. But if you go back in naturopathy to its original roots, there was a lot, it's about natural healing and looking at not just the physical body, which is where all the clinical research happens, but it was also about supporting people emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. There was a lot more energetics to it. And I'm all for evidence-based. I have, post-grad qualifications in science. But to me, to just stay with the physical is not looking at somebody holistically, or the whole person, which is what all of natural medicine and naturopathy was meant to be about. So I have that sciencey side, but I've tried to stay and hold that energetic side of looking at people as well, because we know we're so much more than our physical. So that wasn't really an answer to your question, though. How do I combine them? What was the question?
How has it enhanced your, I guess, with some of your clients? I can only imagine you've been able to, I guess, hone in and provide a little bit more specificity. I can imagine it be like a laser focus.
Yeah, well, you have the opportunity, someone's going to present still with their ailments, right? I'm not a fortune teller. I'm not here to guess what the problem is with somebody. They're going to show up with a problem, but by understanding the medical astrology side, you're understanding kind of their body's energetics and flow, and where it just gives you this extra, it's like a tool to assess their constitutional strengths and weaknesses. And you can see which systems, be it cardiovascular or respiratory or immune, which of those systems might be more under stress due to, looking at, this isn't just sun sign astrology like what you read in the paper. We're talking about calculating someone's whole birth chart and looking at a whole swag of things. So yeah, it's almost cheating. It makes it so much quicker to hone in on underlying systems that get stressed. Or you can then see maybe, there's a beautiful side to it where even though there's a physical ailment, you can look at the emotional, mental, or spiritual kind of connotations to the that astrology. There's a lot of psychology, a lot of what people do astrologically isn't medical. It's more psychological, humanistic, how our emotions are working. And we have that whole side to play with as well, because so many of our ailments are emotion-based, stress-based, however we want to say it. So yeah, it lets you just see somebody from such a bigger holistic view.
Amazing. Now, going back in history, I know, original medicine, how a lot of doctors, in order to receive their MD license, to practice medicine, they needed to have studied astrology. I would love to go down the path of understanding, I guess, in particular, the moon's role in certain days that we should do things, certain days that we shouldn't, and like how that, I guess it's a two-layered question. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
The importance of, for a doctor to have had their astrological training.
Well, look, until about 350 years ago, it was just considered very good practice to also be studying this. And it was taught, Galileo taught medical astrology at the University of Padua in Italy, which was, I think, our first Western medical university. Whether they actually had to do tests or not, I don't know. I'm actually not the world's greatest history person on that. Probably the best history book to read on medical astrology is by Leigh Lehman. She's got a traditional medical astrology book that goes into all the history of it. And a lot of what we were doing has kind of morphed more into psychology these days. Like we were looking at the elements, just like Chinese medicine does in Ayurveda. We were looking at the elements and the ratio of the elements in the body, and then that got called the humors and the temperaments, and it was a whole way to kind of assess the balance of somebody. And that really got taken over by psychology. And if you go into all the different assessments you can do psychologically these days, like Myers-Briggs, if you go back in history, all of those assessments are based off of the elements in the body. So it's interesting to see where it's traveled to. So the history, I'm actually not incredible at teaching about that. The moon. The second part of that question, the moon. Now the moon changes signs every 2.5 days or thereabouts. And so, we have this also in agriculture. You can go back to the Farmer's Almanac, which is still produced today. And there's these theories around which days are better to plant crops, which days are better to harvest, all that type of stuff, days to do weeding. So you also have in astrology, whether it be medical or to do with anything, like, should I cut my hair today? Should I, should you have surgery? There's all these ways to look at what sign the moon is in for the energetics, like, is it stable? Is it changeable? Is there likely to be miscommunication? So in medical, we have the idea of some moons being more receptive or absorptive. Like it's better to give medicines when the moon is in, a water sign or an earth sign. Although I was having this conversation with my class the other day, I don't actually follow that very strictly, because if I want to give a medicine, I want to give a medicine. I'm not going to wait 10 days till it's the right moon. but we can also then look at planetary hours. So we astrologically divide up every hour, hour and a half. It actually changes, and there's apps you can use to look at this, where you every few hours, the rulership of the hour changes to a different planet. So you can, whether it's, making medicines, giving medicines, you can play with that. Was that what you were wanting to know about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's like the full moon to the new moon. You hear about everybody doing rituals and the new moon, or today, I know it's not the day you're going live, but today is actually the solstice, right? So we just had the beautiful change. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, we're going into winter today, Northern Hemisphere summer, and the sun just moved into Cancer. So yeah, there's always auspicious days to do things or not, or better days to start doing things. A lot of people use lunar energy. New moon to full moon is a great time to build and create and push forward. And then you have that culmination of the full moon, and then full moon to new moon is that releasing, resting, don't push as hard. And I do use that a lot with clients, whether it be weight loss or exercise. Not saying they don't exercise in the second half, but you push harder in the first half of the month. So yeah, oh my God, I play with the moon in all kinds of crazy ways. Yeah.
It's amazing. I guess so many people, they wouldn't think twice about this, but once you start attuning to these frequencies and energies, you start to see the results be a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah. And it's not, and I don't preach or teach by any means you need to live your whole life by this. I definitely do stuff not congruent with these, but it's amazing to sit back and look at the rhythms and how much easier some things are when you do try to do an alignment. I think one of my other favorite ones, which is a bit beyond just the moon, is the planetary days. So the days of the week are actually named after the planets, and a lot of people don't realize that. So Monday, or lunes in Latin or Spanish, I'm not even sure what I'm using. Luna, it's the moon. Monday is the moon, Tuesday is Mars, and then I should probably do them all. Wednesday is Mercury, Thursday is Jupiter, Friday is Venus, Saturday is Saturn, and Sunday is the sun. And each of those planets has a different energetics to it about what it means and its definitions and things to do health-wise. And so I do myself, and sometimes with clients, try to set them tasks on those days that are in alignment with that energy. It just makes things easier. I think it's kind of fun, right? Part of medical astrology, yes, this isn't a serious science, but it's a lot of symbolic fun to live your life.
And I know exactly what you mean. And I guess it releases some of that seriousness with it. And so you can, the structure would be fairly easy to follow. Like on Tuesday, Mars Day, there'd be like a lot of fire. So the ignition is running. Let's go.
You can get a lot done. I leave Tuesday as a very, is a great day for doing some sports, getting things done. It's your fire, it's your drive. I find I'm very productive on Tuesdays, whereas Mondays, we always think we're going to be productive, but it's the moon. It's a little waftier. It's a little sleepier. It's funny that we start the week on such a, the work week on such a soft day, whereas it's actually a great day. I now try to do just little paperwork and more creative projects, more intuitive things on a Monday rather than see clients.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. I don't take clients on Monday for that very reason. And I guess we can both say that no two Mondays are ever the same.
No.
Either.
No. Yeah. So. And I'm not as productive, right? I get waftier. I kind of lose concentration more easily. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe want a bit more chocolate.
Yeah. Back to the moon question, I guess imposition I posed. I've got bunny rabbits, and
Aw.
we've got 4 at the moment. They're beautiful, and our lives revolve around them. Anyone who knows me knows I'm the rabbit lady.
That.
But over the years, we've had 4 losses, and I've really, really been just so intrigued and curious with the time of their passing and leading up to their illness, and the phase of the moon and the sign, the zodiac sign. So I'll use one particular example, which I think you might find interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So last year in November, because rabbits, when they get ill, they're very vulnerable. It's rapid onset and it can happen very fast. So we woke up on Monday and the moon was in Leo, and our beautiful Peanut was unwell. And so we rushed him to our vet first thing Monday morning. And at that point in time, they said he could have a possible blockage in the gut, and that, you know, it was very serious. So they put him on the IV, he had some fluids, he had to stay all day at the vet. And because of his condition, he was unable to come home that night. And so he needed aftercare overnight. And our vet doesn't have emergency nurses working. It's not a 24-hour vet. And so we took him 10 minutes away to the emergency vet over at Alexandria in Sydney. And the moment we took him to the vet, that he arrived and we checked him in, the moon was void. And that particular Monday night, the moon was void for like almost 12 hours overnight. And so I just knew nothing would come of him being here. Like I just had this nothing, everything will be okay. Now, the thing that scared me the most overnight, and I remember just thinking to myself, it's going to be interesting what happens tomorrow, because I knew he had a gut problem, and knowing the moon was moving into Virgo, I was really scared.
Yeah.
And sure enough,
Virgo ruling the small intestines, by the way. Yeah. Yeah.
So the minute we picked him up, it was like 7:30 in the morning. The moon was void until 7:40 a.m. And I kid you not, he probably passed away at about 8 to 8 a.m.
Wow.
It was like he waited for the moon.
Yeah.
And
and they say, you know, nothing happens in a void moon. It's like the sitting position where it's not good, it's not bad. It just kind of, there's no outcome, right?
Yes.
So it's not an energy of shifting. And interesting that it was a fixed moon to begin with a blockage, because fixed things that get stuck and blocked, that's a very fixed. Leo is one of the fixed signs. So interesting. That's
so it's like we can read and study all we want, but I think life is always going to be one of our best teachers, because it really shows us how these energies, they're just I'm not giving autonomy or power to the energies, but you can really see them play out in our lives.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's the symbolic nature of the universe. You know, we know quantum, you know, if you take science far enough, you get to quantum physics, and we know it's all, you know, made up of the energetics and the molecules and the energy and things like that. And it's, it's just, I find it just a beautiful way to, it's like not a treasure map, but it's like a blueprint just to understand. It's not, you know, astrology doesn't cause situations. It's more about, it is a way to read the energetics of what's been happening.
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely it's not about, oh my God, this is coming up, something bad could happen. That's not how astrologers actually work, as you know. But for your listeners, it's more about what was the makeup of the energy happening and what transpired that just kind of followed that groove.
I think that there's a good line that says something along the lines of, astrology does, the planets, they don't impel, they compel. And
very true.
In the same way that, you know, if you're walking along and then you see a feather, like you interpret, and we give meaning to what this feather means for us, in the same way to understanding the planets and where they sit in our birth charts.
Well, and I think that's what most humans, you know, when you get down to it and you look at the psychology or, you know, sociology even, you know, we are looking for meaning. We're looking for, you know, what it's all about. And it just gives you a different alphabet to interpret what's going on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The thing that I find intriguing is that, like, some people, they're born and, you know, they live a moderately, you know, I'm using the term loosely, like a healthy life. And then it's, you know, we blame middle age. But I think like, I'd love to touch on Chiron and that Chiron return around 48 to 50 years old and how that plays a role in people's lives.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, would your listeners know what Chiron is already?
I have discussed Chiron in the past, so
okay.
I hope so.
So Chiron, you know, he was this incredible healer. He was the centaur, so half man, half horse. And he oh my gosh, was this incredible healer and teacher of other people. So he taught medicine, he taught archery, he taught warfare. He kind of was the teacher's teacher, or the ultimate mentor. But then he actually got injured himself with an arrow from a demigod that would have killed a mortal, but because he's immortal, he doesn't die, but he can't fix this wound. So even though he's this incredible healer, he can't fix his own wound. And that's not a failure. It's just a fact of living with a situation. And yes, he probably became a better healer because of it. But if you go back in the mythology, he actually was already a healer. So it's not like he became a healer from that accident. But Chiron in medical astrology is really, you know, in regular astrology, we talk about Chiron for like, oh, it's a childhood wound or a wound you've come in with, or something happened when you were young to cause this, you know, I'm very cautious about using the word trauma. I'm going to say trauma with a little t, trauma, but for some people there's trauma with a big T, but some issue that happened growing up that has really influenced you, and you will always have big scar tissue around that issue. So it's something we always need to be working on, that we can't fix, but in working on it, we often become much more whole or aware of it helps us grow our strengths. I hope I'm explaining that okay. In medical astrology, Chiron is often involved in physical ailments, not always. And Chiron returns. So when Chiron has gone all the way around the chart, it returns at 48 to 50 in the chart. For a lot of people, yes, middle age, but it's a real, I'm not saying ailments always happen, like not everybody's going to get cancer, going to have, you know, some big thing like that, but a lot of people experience big health challenges at that time. And I often think it's if people aren't, I mean, it happens for not, how am I trying to explain this? Sorry, my brain is still a little bit fuzzy from the flu. It's people, the ailment often asks us to sit still and sit in our illness or in our pain or within this issue, to kind of look at it and process through it. Not that we can make it go away before we kind of have that, not that 50 is actually halfway through life, because most of us will not live to 100, let's be honest. But I find it's like a recalibration, where if you're not listening, the universe slows you down so you do listen and make adjustments. That's probably took a while to get there. I find a lot of people, for a lot of women or people who menstruate, it's perimenopause, menopause, and that for a lot of people is not just a psychological readjustment on how we feel about ourselves, but physically is a chaotic 5 to 7 years, where your body is doing a lot more changes than you thought were going to happen. I find there's a lot of fatigue with Chiron. Some people get chronic fatigue. Some people just get illnesses where they're very tired for a while. There's a real, yeah. sit still and be like, with Chiron, there's always a bit of a surrender. You know, he couldn't fix his own wound. And in the end, he chose to, sorry, I'm giving you like a monologue. Chiron chose to surrender his immortality and to die rather than to live in pain. He gave his immortality up for a different immortal that was also in pain. So that guy could be out of pain. So there was this like sacrifice of self and a surrender of his power to move to that next level or that next phase. Do you want to add anything to that? I've really rambled a little bit.
I think it's really important to know, like I loved what you said about Chiron wakes you up, because you know, I think most people can attest to there was no such thing, well, in some instances, it's not a sudden onset. If we were to, you know, rewind time and look back, you can almost see breadcrumbs leading you to this moment.
Yeah.
There were clues, there were hints, and because our lives are so busy, we're almost on autopilot, running through our days, day by day, and we say time is flying, you know, time, you know, on and on, that we weren't listening. And so Chiron comes in on his high horse, no pun intended, and is like, well, okay, now if you haven't been listening, I'm going to make sure you listen.
Yeah. You know, a great way to explain, which popped into my head when you were saying that, is most of us do not want to make major changes, and we only make major changes when we're in pain, right? It takes us to get to pain to go, oh shit, I better start doing something about this. And it's sad that we're like that, but that's human nature, right? If there's nothing broken, we're not going to address it. And I think with our human bodies, you know, 30s, you're pretty invincible. 40s, if you're taking okay care, it's pretty invincible. But once you're at that 45 to 55, how well you've looked after your physical form starts really showing up. Yes, there's bad accidents and bad luck and genetics and situations where you don't have enough money for certain treatments or certain foods, but in general, you start paying the piper. Is that a term I should use? You start paying the consequences of what you have or have not done for your physical or mental form once you kind of hit those mid 40s, and that Chiron really comes in and turns the dial up to make sure you're paying some attention.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I guess people on both sides of the coin, like under 50 or that 45 range, and then over 55, we can both, on both sides, you can work with Chiron. Because I think Chiron is not to be feared. It's not something that we should resist, because the more you resist something, the more it shows up.
Well, and they talk about it being where your greatest, they say where your greatest wound is also your genius or your greatest gift. So it's not always, the gift is not perfect health coming back, but the gift is the learning about yourself and self-acceptance. And there's just a different, I mean, I can say this now, I'm 55 this year, right? So I've been through my Chiron return. There's a readjustment of who you are at Chiron return. And the things that you thought were important become a lot less important. And it allows you, that sitting still or being in pain or having to make your changes allows you to distill what is really important and what matters and be a lot clearer about it.
Amazing. There's an astrologer by the name of Steve Judd. He's from the UK, and he has this line where he says, I'm going to tell you that 40s is your midlife. And when you get to 50, I'm going to say that I lied. It's now 50. And then when you get to 60, I'm going to say that's when the real fun starts.
Yeah, I mean, and so many people you talk to do talk about how much more liberating life is once you're not jumping through the hoops of society so much from your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you're settled more into, There's somewhere in your 50s where you start realizing, wow, I'm lucky to have made it this far, and every year is precious. Like there's a different preciousness to about every year once I think you've been through that Chiron return.
Absolutely. And I think, the COVID era put a lot of things into perspective for a lot of people. And now you can see that the collective consciousness is really changing. There's a lot more of a focus on health, and that can mean different things to different people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, God, I think we have so much to unpack from those COVID years. Astrology absolutely boomed in popularity. Like, it is insane to me how many more people turn to it. Not sun sign astrology, but like deep astrology. Because when crisis happens, we look for meaning. We look for a rhythm within our life and our universe. And as we talked about before, astrology is a great symbolic thing to use for that rhythm. But yeah, health is, I think a lot of people have turned to a better healthy lifestyle. And then I also see, and maybe it's because I live in a big city, I don't know, I also feel like people have gone one of two ways, that they're either incredibly generous and everyone's looking after each other, or there's this incredible self-focused selfishness of unaware of everybody else around them, because no one, even though we were globally thinking, we were just operating in our own little sphere for so long. I find it a really interesting dichotomy. Have you found that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. The difference, I guess people don't have the patience anymore for facades, and I think that the big point to make is like authenticity is coming through. It shines.
Yeah. And then I think there's the people who have just gone into this fear state, and it's all about them and what they can do and consume. And it's not right or wrong, but yeah, I think there's a real polarization that's gone on from them. Luckily, I think most people are in that more generous phase, but I definitely find out in the world in a big city, every now and then I'm really thrown by how unawares people are of the people around them.
Yeah. There is a victim mentality, and it comes through. And I think, like I say this often, but I think Pluto in Aquarius is only just getting started with showing us where and how it is playing out, not just in our personal lives, but we see it like, not that I follow or I care, but like with politics, mainstream, see in the media, that it's just constantly glaring at us.
Yeah, and I'm not critiquing anybody per se. I just find it really interesting where we got to because of it. And yeah, health-wise, I think we're still really, I think we really need to unpack the mental, emotional load, mental health from those couple of years. And I think we're in, I think with Pluto moving into Aquarius, it's a good thing. It's much more global uncovering, with that Pluto digging up from underneath, but that Aquarian, what's happening with all of us. But if you think about Aquarius ruling that higher octave of the nervous system, and just the energetics of what's happened, I think our bodies need a lot more. Even though we were kind of stuck at home, we actually need to calm and rest our nervous systems more than we realize.
Absolutely. Nervous system resets, and I guess having that awareness of where is your nervous system? Where are you sitting? Because chronic stress is driving the game.
Oh yeah, and we're in a lot of trouble right now. Like, and in some ways, we've kind of sped up after the lockdowns, and it's like I almost feel like it's all going so fast at the moment. And again, that's our poor little adrenals and our poor nervous systems needing that nourishment. And it'll be interesting. Jupiter just moved. Didn't Jupiter just move into Gemini? My brain, I'm sorry, I'm on fever brain here still. Yeah, like there's a lot of nervous system energy coming out right now. So it's going to be interesting.
One thing I'd love to touch on is how each sign of the zodiac, so the 12 zodiac signs, rule different parts of the body, as we mentioned before. And I know that you've mentioned in other podcasts that you've been interviewed on that you have a lot of Aries energy. And so you've had a few too many stitches to the head. And
yes. Yes. Yeah. So are you wanting me to go through the body parts?
I guess like it's not necessarily to go through them, but to really
explain
see
what happens.
Yeah. How does it, like, just the nuances?
So it's the idea that, I mean, we have your sun sign, wherever the sun was when you were born. Your big three is your sun, your moon, and your ascendant or your rising sign. And your ascendant or your rising sign is actually what's in charge of your physical body. But we do tend to do ailments, especially in our big three. And so, yeah, as you know from being in classes with me, I've got a lot of Aries planets, a lot of Aries energy. And so when I injure myself, or when I get sick, Aries rules the whole head, right? It's the first sign of the zodiac. So it has that whole upper head area. So I tend to, I have 6 sets of stitches in my body, 5 sets are in my head. I get headaches really easy. If I get sick, it will tend to stay up in my sinuses and be a fever and congestion rather than like everybody getting the same virus has slightly different symptoms. So the Taurians will be like, oh my God, my throat is so sore. And the Geminis get this lungy cough really quickly. And so, so I do head ailments really well. Yeah. Sadly.
I started to notice that when I've got 2 nephews, both with an Aries moon, and they've both had stitches to their head. And it's just so uncanny. You just cannot make this up.
And Aries, we're excitable and we kind of act before we think. And so we don't often look what we're doing. And if you think of the symbol of the ram, and an Aries, and they literally put their head down and charge forward. And so they bump into things and they break things. And yes, I have a few little extra lumps on my skull and calluses from too many head injuries. Luckily not that many concussions. So I was talking about that the other day with somebody, but
good. I guess I can use my wish, and one day I can see it happening as the more time goes on, that astrology becomes more mainstream and younger people, we're noticing that a lot more younger people are starting to adopt this. And by the time these young people have children of their own, there will be an understanding. And so we're seeing this evolution happening, and it's going to really change the way our society functions on so many levels.
Look, I hope so. And modern medicine is phenomenal. Do I actually need modern medicine as it is to change? I think it's emergency medicine, and as diagnostic medicine, it's phenomenal. But what my wish is for everybody to just be a bit broader about understanding about themselves and the energetics of what's going on. It's an interesting one. I've never thought about this before. Do I actually need astrology to be reaccepted into modern medicine? I don't think that's possible. I think it's gone too far, but I love the fact that the average person wants to look at more layers than just their physical body, because we are so much more than just, yes, the physical is there and we need surgery and antibiotics and x-rays and all that amazing stuff, but there's so much more to our health on different, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And I think just giving us tools to be able to understand ourselves better. Isn't that what we're all trying to do anyway?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bit off topic, but I think relevant. I don't know if you've read Tony Robbins' book, Life Force.
Oh, I haven't read that one. I've read some of his other ones. Yep.
Yeah, it's a really good book. It just talks about
is he going more spiritual?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, just some of the more innovative technologies and the most current and up-to-date systems and implementations that modern medicine has. He makes such an important note that has just stuck with me, where he says, by the time a doctor finishes their 6, 7, 8-year training, by the time they graduate and they start practicing, the technologies and the implementations and systems that they've learned have already become outdated.
Oh, interesting.
And so then by the time, they start working, they're obviously paying off all their debt to the college and the universities, and they would accrue so much that they don't have the time to then go back and restudy some of the things. And it's just this ongoing loop. And it just made me put things into perspective about, the types of practitioners you see.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's beautiful that we do have so many different types of practitioners we can see. If I think about, my literal swag of health people that support me or that I reach out for, it's phenomenal, and I don't think any person should be doing it all anyway, right? I love, like I was saying before, I love modern medicine and what people are doing. I find it interesting what Tony's saying, because the human body's not changing. We're understanding more about the human body, but that bit's not changing, and they've done so much of their study there. But yeah, oh my gosh, I have so many practitioners I see depending on what's going on. Be they energetic or physical, or I think that's the beauty, is that we don't, but there's not just one way, right? And it's interesting, everyone's idea of scope of what they're willing to see. I'm born from two scientists, and my dad literally will only stick to modern medicine, right? I don't even think he's ever had a massage. He's got a back, he's 87 and he's taken really good care of himself, and he loves nutrition, but that's his alternative. As he's never allowed me to give him herbs or anything like that. And he's got a back problem now from a disc, and it was like, acupuncture would be an amazing thing for this pain. Oh, I don't know, I'm not sure Harvard Medical School says that that's legit, and even though it's been around for like 5,000 years, but everybody has their different comfort zones.
He sounds like a very someone with a lot of fixed energy.
Traditional energy. I'm going to give him a Capricorn traditional energy. Nice. Is what I'm, but and that's all right. That's his paradigm of what he's chosen to be comfortable with. But I guess what, practicing such an like literally alternative style of assessment, because it's not diagnosis. I'm not diagnosing anything. I just wish we would all stop. I'm going philosophical on you. I wish we would all stop critiquing each other and just kind of go, you know what? There's all these different things for different people, and what works for one's not going to work for another, or just, mentally, emotionally. I just wish we would stop beating up all the other modalities.
That's such a good point to make. Yeah. There's beauty in everything. And the more, I guess, it's honoring people where they're at.
Yeah.
And some people are not ready to take the leap, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they've just never been exposed to it, or never had that need. And it's always exciting when someone kind of wakes up to more alternative stuff and has big shifts, or, helps their health in some way. That's always really exciting.
Absolutely. And I think, like, we can see, I guess, making observations with the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra at the moment until early next year. People, the one thing that, like, the most obvious thing for me is people outsourcing their own power. It's like, I've just noticed that it comes up often. People need external validation. They need answers from outside of themselves. And I think the North Node in Aries is teaching us that you have the answers inside of you. Because a lot of the time when you either see someone or you receive answers from outside of you, it's like, oh, that's what I was thinking all along. The answers, and it's just a shame that we need that external validation.
Well, we almost as a society don't teach that, do we? Right? We don't, yes, experts are experts and they're amazing that they're there when you need them, but we don't teach people that trust as often. And with the Aries North Node, I think a lot of people are discovering things about themselves and learning how to take better care of themselves rather than depending on others to also fix things for them. I think there's that, I mean, that's kind of what you just said, but especially with health, North Node in Aries is about learning what you need, not what other people tell you you need, right? And owning it, but also owning that you're in charge of your own health. And I think that's, you know, as a complementary medicine practitioner, that's what we're always doing, right? It's like genetics is, you know, they say genetics is the gun, and then your health and lifestyle. That's a terrible analogy, actually. I'm not going to use that. But, you know, genetics is only 20% of the game. 80% is accidents, what you come in contact with, but also what you do. And people, you know, health is exhausting and a lot of hard work, a lot more hard work for some people than others. But we have to own it, you know, and I think we're coming to that, right? And I hope we are.
Oh, absolutely. On that note, can you please let the listeners know where they can find you, what courses you have offering? Because I can highly, highly recommend learning from Kira. You're an amazing.
I love teaching. Teaching is one of my big things. So my website is, and my Instagram account is astrologyofhealth.com. Is my .com? Yes, .com. So I do see clients, but I have a really large wait list at the moment. So that's not a good option of how to get a hold of me, but there is a wait list people can sign up on my website. But I do a lot of I have a lot of classes, whether they are live classes or pre-recorded classes. So if people are interested in medical astrology and learning about it, there's a whole swag of classes, from little baby intro things to big diplomas. But there's also on my website an area where you can go and listen to 20 different podcasts I've been on and hear all kinds of stuff for free. So go have a play on the website, and hopefully by the end of the year, my first book comes out.
Amazing.
By the end of the year, my first book will be out. I'm going to start saying it that way.
Good. Looking in the present.
Yeah. So I think that's about where to find me. Astrology of Health, Instagram.
Perfect. You've been, and I'll make sure I pop the details below when you're listening. So you've been, so this has been so much fun. It's you make the seriousness of this topic, you make it light and so accessible. That's what I guess has drawn me so much to your.
We've gone very philosophical, actually. I hope that was all right. As I've said, and we all get sick. I had the flu, like hardcore flu, for the last week, so my brain's just starting to work again.
Well, thank you for showing up.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Kira. All my love. Wherever you're listening from, if you can give us a review and a 5-star rating, that would be so helpful in supporting this podcast. If this lights you up and inspires you in any way, then please make sure that you share this episode with others and reach out to me and let me know. I'm beyond grateful and blessed to call this work. Together, we learn, grow, and evolve. Staying anchored in your heart means staying anchored to your humanity. All my love, Natasha.